All right, we shall start. So, Tom, Christian, thank you very much for joining us today. For folks
Sure.
that are
Glad to be
joining
here.
online, if you're here for the Certemy Fireside chat with Tom and Christian at F&W to talk a little bit about technician compliance and onboarding, just a couple of housekeeping items here. Everybody will get a copy of the presentation. So we're videotaping this and we'll share a copy with everybody. The agenda is very simple. We're going to chat for about 20 minutes. I'll ask Tom and Christian a few questions. We'll get some answers, and then we'll open it up to you, the online audience, and hopefully you'll have a couple of questions for Tom and Christian. So without any further ado, let's kick things off. Tom and Christian, if you guys could just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about F&W Pest Control in terms of where you are, the folks that you serve, and so on and so forth, just so that people get a sense of what you guys are up to.
Sure. My name is Tom Gibbons, one of the owners of a fourth generation pest control company here. Greater Boston area, we have two branch offices, one kind of towards central Mass and the other down towards the southern part of Mass, towards Rhode Island. Company started in 1935. My brothers and I purchased the company from my dad back in 1999. I've been running it since. Christian's been with us about 15 years or so.
Yeah, I've been here for about 15 years. Started as a technician, and I have been their service manager for the last 2.5 years or so.
Yeah. One of the problems we tend to have over time is that keeping track of our certifications for our technicians has always been a real problem. We have a staff entomologist. We do a lot of training in-house. Our technicians do attend some outside trainings as well, provided by our distributors and vendors. And that's always been a very manual process for tracking. So we teamed up with the team at Certemy. Late last year, we kind of started this path of getting on board and kind of making it a more official and truly verifiable training program for our technicians.
So when you talk about technician compliance, give us a sense of what that term means to you in terms of, mandatory external compliance, perhaps around licensing, perhaps some voluntary stuff that you like or choose to comply with, like OSHA. Just give us a sense of what compliance means to you
Sure.
guys, and then we'll talk a little bit about, dig in a little bit about problems you've had in the past managing that and how's that changed.
The big one, I'll
Let's
kind
start
of
with
just give you my 2 cents worth. I'll turn it over to Christian because he's really more hands-on with this currently. It's always been continuing education credits for our technicians. Where we are in Mass, we have a couple of different levels of certification. We have a license, which is kind of the base entry point for our technicians when they come on board as a new employee. And then after time, you can take specialized exams and get your certification in different areas like vector control, mosquito control, rodent trapping, vertebrae, pest management. So there's a series of them that we can get. And each one requires that we have certain continuing education contact hours per year, and keeping track of that's always been a very manual process that was really left up to the technicians. Obviously, OSHA compliance is a big issue for us. Our guys are dealing with ladders. We have to make sure we're doing respiratory fit testing, especially this day and age. Make sure we're compliant with that. So I'll turn it over to Christian. He can probably speak in more detail as far as what he deals with.
So mandatory external stuff, the state licensing, you need to make sure your guys are actually licensed to do the tasks that you're sending them out to do. The non-mandatory stuff is still good to have, which is a lot of, like Tommy said, the OSHA related things, fall training. We do have guys up on ladders doing roof line exclusion. So you want to make sure that they know what all the safety precautions they need to take are. But then there's the internal stuff too, like, sexual harassment training, your general onboarding with new guys, and then stuff like, your drug policies, your maintenance policies. There's always a lot to track, whether it's stuff that's we're creating in-house or something from outside the company that we need to kind of keep tabs on.
So a lot of stuff to keep tabs on. Some of it required, some of it you choose to do it. How historically, you said it was a manual process, Tom, but for both of you, how historically did you try and keep track of this and stay on top of it?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it definitely, it's a manual sort of ad hoc process is how we've done it traditionally. The 2.5 years I've been manager, if you're bringing somebody on, you collect all the information initially by hand. You're making photocopies or scanning things in. We've been trying to evolve and have a central database, but we never really got there, at least with how we used to do things. So it was always bits and pieces, do you have this license? Yes. And they'll hand it to you, you scan it in, you set that aside. Well, do you have this? Do you have that? Well, we need to have you take this test to get this certification now. So let's sit down and do that. And it was always almost more like just running down literally a manual checklist.
So it was a challenge to make sure that everybody went through the same checklist. It sounds like very much paper-based, maybe a couple of spreadsheets.
Yeah, it was paper-based. We started using Trello boards about 1.5 years ago. That was definitely an improvement over what we started with, but it was still a challenge. And one of the issues for us is, as far as career advancement for our technicians, when they start as a new tech coming in with just that core license, part of their incentive package is, they can earn more and bump up the rate scale as they get more certifications, become more valuable to us and our customers. And it was always a challenge to track that in their progress. And it really wasn't fair to our employees over time because they didn't know where they stood. So, now that we have a system in place we can actually practice, it's fairly easy for us to say, if you want to progress to a senior technician, here is the path and here's the training you have to accomplish. And we can help provide those resources through the platform to make it much, much easier for our techs to kind of do that on their own. And they know what the next steps are in their career. So it's really been.
Now, and we'll definitely dig in more into the onboarding aspect of this. From the compliance side, have you ever had issues that result from not having a good digital record of compliance, whether it be around, I've certainly read horror stories of pest control companies that sent guys in to do a fumigation, and there were issues, and the property owners got sick, and there's fines, there's damaged reputation, lost business. When you think about managing compliance, whether it's the hard compliance issues like licensing or some of the softer issues around training and education, around material handling and equipment handling, how important is it to you in terms of what's the consequence if you don't have that buttoned up? Are they serious, or are they kind of not so serious?
They're fairly serious. Where we are, a misapplication, which could be from a non-licensed applicator or an applicator that doesn't have a certification to use restricted use products, can result in a fine of $25,000 per occurrence. So if he's doing 10 or 12 stops a day, he or she, that can mount up pretty quickly. Fortunately, we've never been in that situation. We were always able to kind of maintain control over that, although it was a much more manual process than it is now. But it's certainly one of those things that kept me up at night. I did have a close friend, similar industry, that had an issue where one of his employees, an industrial accident that resulted in a death. And OSHA was all over him very quickly to make sure that he had done the appropriate training and had the documentation and could verify this employee had been trained properly. It was a ladder issue. So, obviously a concern, and it hit somebody very close to me. So it's a real problem.
Yeah, it seems that there's two sides of the coin. The first is making sure that everybody is appropriately licensed and trained, but also being able to prove that that is the case, to have some central electronic logbook where I can clearly see all of the training and education that Christian, for example, has received, and I can see that he's current on all of his licenses, so that if somebody does come knocking on the door claiming malpractice, or if an employee, God forbid, files a worker comp claim, you've got that digital record that says, no, this individual fully licensed, fully trained, fully educated, and here's the evidence to prove it.
No, absolutely. We do have high-end commercial accounts that we're required to document all this information for them on an annual basis. So again, manual process in the past. Now that we actually have this verified training, you can prove that the documentation's there, that they've been through all the courses they need to take, have the proper certifications that they need to have. It's super helpful.
And I'm sure, like most pest management companies, you've got some kind of pest management software. Is this something that they tend to address, or is it something that's really been left out of their core feature set? And if you want to fully automate it, you've got to kind of go elsewhere.
I think they addressed it to some extent, where there was the ability to, upload documentation to employees' records, and then we can push that down to where our customers would log in online to check the information out. So I think, they do an okay job at it, but certainly not to the extent that we've seen with the platform that we're on now with Certemy, much more robust as far as what we can track and what we can do.
Yeah, I've seen that. Whether it's the pest management system or it's an HR system, it's one thing to be able to upload documents and attach them to an employee record, but it's another thing to have a very specific checklist of requirements with deadlines, and use that to proactively drive compliance rather than simply use your pest management system or your HR system as a repository for information that you may or may not collect in the absence of a checklist. Okay, so we talked about how you manage compliance in the past. So let's talk a little bit more about the benefits that come from automating both the compliance and the onboarding process. And just to be clear to everybody listening, really compliance is making sure that everybody is fully and appropriately trained, licensed, certified, educated. Onboarding, of course, is hiring somebody, and a key part of that is making sure that they're compliant. So they kind of go together there, which is why we're blurring the lines a little bit in this conversation. But tell us a little bit about how automating the onboarding compliance process, what do you no longer have to do? And Christian, you and I had a quick chat about this a couple of weeks ago with Jamie, and you had a couple of really good comments about how it shifts the burden and the responsibility away from you, the supervisor. So maybe tell us again what you told me as to why the system is so helpful and how it helps save you time and effort.
Sure. Yeah. So in a nutshell, it's because it shifts a lot of what you have to do day to day away from the supervisor. So instead of me calling, texting, emailing technicians to check up where they are in a particular process, the automation, particularly the platform we're using now, it's easy to see what they're doing, what part of the process they're in. We can set things up where I have to approve it before it's actually entirely completed. If there's documents that we're looking for, that way we're not just taking people's word for it. I spend a lot less time chasing people, essentially. Because with the way we would normally do things, even for something as basic as annual license renewal, the state would send out a notification saying, okay, guys, it's time to renew your license. And then I would send something out and say, okay, guys, you probably got this from the state. You need to renew your license. And then I'd even have to, with some guys, break it down to a step-by-step process. And then a week goes by, 2 weeks go by. Okay, who's actually renewed their license? And then another week goes by. Okay, who still hasn't renewed their license? With the automation, it's all built in. I can see who's actually logged on and started the process. Have they actually received the license? Is it there for me to see? So I'm spending less of my time calling my technicians and hassling them. The system does it for me.
Yeah, and it's just to explain to folks, it's literally, it's looking at all the requirements that you've defined and sending them email alerts to say, you've got 5 days to do this, 2 days to do that, 24 hours to do this, and providing you with a dashboard so you can see exactly who's on time and on task and who's falling behind, so that you're really only chasing down the folks that aren't getting it done as opposed to chasing everybody down. Is that?
Exactly. Yeah, you can, and that's the thing, depending on what it is you're asking them to do, you set all the parameters. They have a month to do this, and then it'll alert them again after 2 weeks, then it alerts them again after a week. Or if it's something with a quick turnaround time, like you said, it might be 5 days, 2 days, 24 hours. You get to set all those parameters and then see exactly where they are in the process.
So I can see how this is definitely helping with onboarding. I know that we've had a conversation in the past, Tom, about also using this to not only define the requirements for a new technician that's being onboarded, but really to define the requirements for promotions, so that each position, technician 1, technician 2, technician 3, supervisor 1, you can lay out all of the requirements, and every technician can see those requirements, and they know exactly what they need to do, including how many hours of work experience in addition to training and education and licensing that they need to accrue in order to be eligible to be considered for a promotion. Is that something that you're currently doing or anticipating doing with the software?
It's something we've done in a manual process in the past, and we've built that in now to the platform, so it's much easier for us to kind of expose that to the employees. The nice thing we like about that is we can also put links to the training materials directly in to the paths, so they don't have to come looking to us for documentation. So part of what we're doing is certainly getting the certifications in the state and getting those passed in a timely manner. The other part of that is obviously Quality Pro compliance and training and different levels of Quality Pro that are out there, because we are a Quality Pro company. So that's a big part of it. So again, all those resources are right at the employee's fingertips, and they can basically self-manage, self-direct their training.
And everybody's looking at the same set of requirements, the same dashboard, the same reports, and everything's in one place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, I'm actually, just not to go too far off topic, but I'm going crazy right now because our school is trying to set up some kind of online learning for the kids. And there's emails coming in from different teachers. There's 2 different systems that you're using to track what the kids need to be doing. There's no information to see if the kids are actually doing the work that's been assigned to them. And it's just a nightmare because the information is scattered across all these different systems. And I would imagine you had a similar problem until you could bring everything together, one place. Everybody knows what needs to get done. You can clearly see who's done what. And you can't manage a process unless you've got centralized requirements, centralized tracking and reporting.
Exactly. So we would do this in the past manually, would give the training manuals to a new employee, and then get busy and you forget about it. You know, maybe there's a reminder in your calendar somewhere down the line, but it's nothing that's really automated. So a lot of times we'd give this information out, 9 months later, the employee's like, hey, I lost the training book and I get another copy. You know, I want to pick this up again. So the fact that, again, we have everything centralized and we can track it, and there's time limits placed on things as reminders. We can see how far through the process they progress. So much easier.
So in the past, you'd give them a paper-based training manual. You'd be Christian and others would be sending ad hoc emails and just stopping people, you know, in the break room. Have you done this? Have you done that? There's paper being scanned and uploaded into different systems, maybe your HR system, maybe your pest management system, and it's just everything is all over the place.
Correct. Yep.
All right, let's see. You know, I'm going to open it up for questions in just a moment, but I don't want to ignore the elephant in the room. I know that all small businesses are obviously being impacted by the coronavirus. Tell us a little bit about how it's impacting your business, Tom and Christian, how you guys are trying to protect the business in general, You talked a little bit about some of your commercial customers, which I assume includes restaurants, and then how you're trying to protect the technicians themselves, who presumably want to keep working, but don't want to expose themselves to the virus. So it's totally off topic, but I think it would be crazy for us not to touch on this.
Absolutely.
Would love to hear your thoughts, and I would think that most people listening would also be curious to hear how you're
So
coping.
here in Mass, we've been under not a lockdown, but commercial food handling establishments were shut down about a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
They're allowed to do takeout, so that certainly had a big impact on our commercial business as far as food handling and hospitality goes. As of noontime yesterday, the governor shut down all non-essential businesses in the state. Fortunately, at the last minute, we were designated as a required service, essential service. So what we've done is we basically notified all our customers via email what our approach was. On the commercial side, we're asking them to reach out to us if they're still open and want us to come service. We'll continue to do that for them. If that does happen, our technicians are equipped with personal protective gear so they can certainly take care of themselves out in the field, try to do social distancing. We've eliminated the handshake and the greetings. Requiring signature capture on the mobile devices has been waived for now. And we're just trying to be flexible and work with our customers. On the residential side, as we're coming into spring, we've let our residential customers know that we're going to continue with exterior only services unless there is a definitive problem inside the property, an active infestation. In that case, our team, our inside sales team and office team has a series of questions that they'll ask the customer. Has anybody been quarantined? Has anybody been sick? Have you traveled any of the designated countries lately? And as long as the answer to those are all no, we will schedule the interior service to take care of that. And at the same time, our technicians, gloves, face masks if needed, social distancing, and trying to just minimize any exposure. And then obviously CDC's best practices, hand washing, all those things that we've all been practicing lately.
Yeah. So online audience members, Bill, I know you're usually rarely short of a question or two. If there's any questions from any of you that are currently listening you'd like to put to Tom, just go ahead and do that. You should be able to see in the Zoom interface, you'll see a little Q&A option that allows you to submit a question. So feel free, if you've got a question, just to submit that there. And while I'm waiting to see if any questions come in, you touched on this a little bit earlier, Tom, but I just wanted to maybe double click on it a little bit. I know that you recently went through a Quality Pro audit. And I know chatting with you and with Christian, it was a fairly manual effort to pull together all of this documentation, but basically you were working against a set of requirements. And I'm just wondering whether the software that's managing onboarding requirements, compliance requirements, could also be useful in making sure that you're more proactive about preparing for some of these audits.
Yeah, so the Quality Pro audit specifically, the software centralizing things, particularly with onboarding, helps because a big chunk of their audit had to do with your hiring practices. So having a lot of that centralized in one spot would help. There are some oddball things that they ask for that you would very unlikely end up putting in a central database like that. But that stuff, if that's all you had to concentrate on and everything else was easy to find in one spot, it would definitely make things go a lot quicker. I was pulling down a lot of our hiring documentation. It then had to be redacted before it could be rescanned in and then uploaded. A lot of that stuff was things that, again, scattered and all had to be pulled together. So it'll definitely help. I mean, anybody who gets audited by Quality Pro, there's still probably a handful of things you'll have to fish around for. But for the most part, that's minimal. So it definitely helps.
I know it's pretty crazy times, Tom and Christian, so I'm not going to extend this. Let's let you get back to business. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Tom and Christian, for spending some time with us. And everybody just stay safe, and hopefully we'll get to the other side of this sooner versus later. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Christian.
Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Appreciate it.